Coming up on today's wrestling news, AEW are making big changes to the Continental Classic.
Orange Cassidy talks AEW's attendance drops.
TNA champions are going to be sticking around in the company.
And Bayley discusses this fairytale moment.
I'm Adam Wilborn.
I'm Michael Hamflett.
And this is the news. So the Continental Classic kicked off last night on AEW Dynamite. We're going to be talking all about it on the Dynamite Review podcast, wherever you get your podcast from, a little bit later on today. But some interesting details have come out regarding some slight changes to the tournament. Now, you may remember last year, the semi-finals of the tournament took place on telly, and it was the first and second, or the other group, first and second and third finishers fighting each other from each league to qualify for the final, which took place at World's End to crown the champion, of course. But some big changes there now. Now the semi-finals are also going to be taking place at World's End, and it's going to work a little bit like a football, soccer tournament in the fact that they're also going to be doing the highest place finisher on one side of the bracket, one league, versus the runner-up on the other side. So in theory you could basically get a rematch in the final, but it would also be on the same night. The semi-finals and the finals will be taking place all at World's End on December 28th. What do you reckon about all this?
I like all of it, if I'm honest, but I especially like the mini tournament setting. I like the idea that Kazuchika Okada, as a defending champion, still has to wrestle twice on the night to get it done. It'll kind of put over and I still expect him to make the final, by the way, but it kind of puts over, regardless of the character he's playing, or if people kind of think he's become a bit of a comedic figure, the fact that he's going to have to show the will to win, and he's going to have like two great matches to like hold that title and hold it proudly and all that. I think it's good for the belt, genuinely. I think if there's any way that Daniel Garcia makes it all the way and we can still fantasy book our reduction of AEW titles, having that final as a champion versus champion match, that can work, can't it?
Yeah.
We can get to that arrangement. Don't mind that. I also think I quite like the winner versus runner-up. The reason we have that in football, and kind of why you condition to it in some sports, is because there's a reward for winning, not just simply making it to that next step. You are theoretically in a better position if you win your group, if you win your block. So, I'm kind of into this. I'm not too worried about the prospect of a rematch in the final, because I feel like if they've booked it this way, they probably won't have. Yeah. It could happen.
In theory, could you get Ospreay versus Fletcher and then Ospreay versus Okada on the same night, and Okada versus, let's say, Ricochet? If I got my maths right.
All of a sudden, the reason to do this has opened up. But even if there was, even if there was sort of like a rematch or something you've already seen on that night, you've then got the story of what happened in their group game. You know, it's like, well, they've got the points in the group, can they do it again?
Are they part of the bus?
Well, indeed, just like see out the time limit, and then they went on goal difference from the first match. We've stretched this analogy too far.
Yeah, do away goals count double on the at World's End?
How does that work?
I don't know.
I like it.
Yeah, I like
Broadly,
it too.
yeah.
I think it's an improvement. I'll be honest, I misremembered. I thought it was winner versus runner-up from each opposite league last year, but that's because my brain's mush now, having had a child. So
it was G1 last year, so you had the group finals, and then
there was the three-way in the Mox's group, wasn't
that's
there?
That's right. Yeah, three-way tie.
But I really like it, and I like this time of year. It sort of guarantees really exciting matches. What we got next week. Brody versus Claudio, did they say?
Yes, set it up at the end of last night's Dynamite.
That's going to be really tasty, and I just think it's a really fun format, and the fans obviously really enjoy watching the Continental Classic, and the people they've got in yet again this year, as much as they're missing Takeshita in our opinion, always make for it a very exciting tourney.
Yeah, all good. Less good is AEW's kind of attendance woes and business and all that kind of things. They, I guess, hope the Continental Classic can do something to arrest that decline. And indeed, there are several problems that you can listen to us gassing on about on the podcast with the brilliant Michael Sidgwick, based on an article he has published at whatculture.com/WWE. We're going to go into a long-form discussion on our main channel. You can find that right here, discussing multiple problems within AEW and hopefully how they can be fixed on
every solution, every problem in AEW we found a solution to. So we fixed AEW, basically. That's coming your way later on.
Asked and answered. And Orange Cassidy has been speaking about this and is quite pragmatic about the current state of things in AEW, as you would imagine someone like Orange Cassidy to be.
He did just get his head caved in as well. So.
Well, indeed, yeah. He was speaking to the legendary Bill Apter for WrestleBinge on Sportskeeda, and he said this was in specific reference to the criticism of AEW's attendances over the last sort of couple of years. He said, we're going to have to go through adjustments. This isn't going to be a thing that's an only now problem. We're going to have problems throughout our entire tenure. I always feel like the powers that be in AEW are trying to do the best to bring the best product. And then he added, in relation to the locker room, the locker room in AEW is incredible. I think what we're trying to cultivate in AEW is a place where if you're a roster member, we work together to make everybody better. We're trying to make that thing where it's not, I need to step on this person so I can get higher up the ladder. We're going to help each other up the ladder. So you kind of expect this sort of thing from an Orange Cassidy type figure, the way he's kind of like sort of eventually got his break in AEW and the version of the industry he's kind of come up in.
Yeah.
But I think having that balance when you're one of the wrestlers is important as well. Obviously, we can only ever speculate on what it must be like to be wrestling for a company when the territory is cold.
Yeah.
Not least when it doesn't have as much an impact on the pay like it used to. Like, gone are the days where you look at that empty house and you think, like, oh, right, well, that's my pay going down and down and down. Not now. But we have sort of said it must be difficult for performers. Performers want to perform, it's in the word. And going out there and like... Adam Copeland is always the example, right? He would run to both sides, and currently he can't. And wrestlers, like when, for years on those SmackDown tapings, it's like you're cutting promos to nobody. You're wrestling.
How surreal that must be.
Your stage is effectively in front of the crowd because you're performing to nobody when you're staring down the lens of that hard camera. And you wonder what that must be like on the sort of, if it wears on wrestlers mentally, because it reflects something and they want to see things go up. So yeah, good to have like a company talisman like Orange Cassidy speaking about this, and you'd like to think that kind of messaging can sit with John Moxley's more, can we call it like constructive criticism?
Yes.
Or kind of like, it's not like open disdain, but he's somebody that kind of is wanting to like grab people by the scruff of the neck. You kind of need different versions of those kind of company figureheads, and this is
exactly
like another one from Orange.
And it's always nice to hear, and I think this applies to both WWE and AEW, that the locker rooms are significantly different from how the stories used to be coming out about how toxic they are. And Cassidy there talks about not feeling you have to stand on someone else to get further up or what have you. I'm sick and tired of talking about attendances. Go to smaller venues, it's simple.
I mean, we're having that as well, aren't we? Yeah. Like the Collision's going to be at that convention place, the Hammerstein for Dynamite. We're all excited about that.
Yeah.
Like genuinely excited to like sort of
not
feel
GCW, but
that vibe and that buzz. Like in those smaller buildings, and I always use this as an example. SummerSlam '92 was at Wembley Stadium in the August, and Raw was starting at the Manhattan Center in the January. The business can look like that sometimes, but it can be the betterment of everybody. You can sort of juggle both.
And it must be nice as well, because like you say, sometimes you can get a bit disillusioned if the crowd just aren't into your match or whatever, but if you're coming back through the curtain, you're still getting the back slaps from your peers and your colleagues and what have you. That must be encouraging, because you do get the feeling sometimes you will watch a match and go, God, they're trying really hard and getting absolutely nothing. So it must be nice to have that collective.
What's our stance? Is it like competitive locker room good, cruel locker room bad?
Yeah.
That's where we stand, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I like a bit of people wanting to be the best.
CM Punk in the locker room, better. So we're talking about him later on today, of course.
We are always talking about the Punk.
On the afternoon, so do join us for that one. But from AEW and WWE to TNA, with some interesting details about some champions who are going to be sticking around, thankfully. The TNA Tag Team Champions of the World, the Hardy Boys, have signed a new deal this week, according to Fightful Select. They obviously won the tag team titles at TNA Bound for Glory. But on November 27th, yep, that was yesterday. Sean Ross Sapp confirmed they signed a one-year deal. They weren't locked down, but it's one of those... You sticking around, yeah? I mean, you have got the tag titles. Please don't go anywhere. Matt Hardy apparently originally came in for a defined number of dates, but decided to stay when his brother joined. They've agreed to continue working with TNA. They can work indie dates as well. Presumably that also applies if they want to pop up onto NXT with that relationship that they culminated, of course. But cultivated, not culminated. They're going to be sticking around in TNA, which I think is the best for everyone.
It's kind of like a bit of dream business done by the Hardy Boys here. So they get the belts, which solidifies their status within TNA. It's at that point they're able to sign a one-year deal, so that's a bit of comfort in the surroundings for the next 12 months. And as you say, those surroundings just happen to currently have a side hatch back to WWE where they could potentially repeat the same trick again.
I'm fine, thank you, but it's nice to know that they could do that.
Theoretically, all the kind of, it's 25 years since I think we saw them. Well, it's even longer, obviously, but 25 years since you first saw them kind of rebadged alongside Michael Hayes and then Gangrel. It's kind of like the breakthrough role.
Not wrestling as like a 15-year-old who's like, I'm definitely 18.
Yeah, I promise I'm 18. All the years in their self-made tights and all that kind of thing. We've kind of had them at virtually a version of the top of the game now for quarter century, which is quite remarkable. Like getting like another year deal as champions, no less.
And they've been getting all the rub off Joe Hendry, of course, recently.
Indeed.
Teaming up with him and doing all of his fun shtick.
But speaking as an NXT loyalist, you're not so worried if the TNA contract means staying in TNA, right?
Yeah, look, NXT's fine as it is. It's phenomenal. It's better than fine as it is right now. And Fraxium are the best tag team in the world, in my opinion, right now.
Yeah,
they're awesome.
I dare say Matt Hardy's making some calls pitching that exact dream match, but we will see. Do you know somebody who would love, say, like a Team Extreme surprise appearance in their respective Royal Rumbles?
Who's that?
Bayley.
Yes.
She obviously has always spoken about like what an influence Lita was to her and Hardy,
nerd,
big Hardy boys, and indeed wrestling fan, and it perhaps explains why she's revealed what this was like one of her big fairy tale WWE moments. So it kind of makes sense when we reveal it ourselves. Speaking to the reality of wrestling, she said being able to point at the WrestleMania sign was so hard to do with a straight face and not just break down crying. A crazy moment, but it was like a fairy tale. You never know who's going to walk out next. I think it's awesome that women want to be here can now have that goal. She's of course speaking of the Royal Rumble and indeed the moment in 2024 where she got to win and point at the sign to let everybody know she was going to WrestleMania. I kind of like spotted this one and thought we could include it because it was a bit of a one for me, to be honest. I feel like a little bit of a Bayley lifer, and there's many of us, and it's not been the easiest run on this main roster, but she had a kind of an NXT run nearly 10 years ago now. Well, so it started 10 years ago. That was the kind of run that it just makes you a fan for life of a wrestler. It gets under your skin to such an extent that kind of no matter what they do after that, you were just like, well, there was this, so shut up, you're wrong, in fact.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of years of having to say that when it came to someone like Bayley, kind of a lifesaver in the pandemic when she finally started getting some of her flowers. We'll never forget the injustice of her not getting onto WrestleMania 37.
Oh, yeah.
But then, the Royal Rumble to WrestleMania.
Get beaten up by the Bellas.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember that.
The Rumble to WrestleMania run this year. She couldn't make it onto the posters. She couldn't make it onto the Vegas kickoff, but she did at least make it to winning the Rumble and winning the belt at Mania. So it was kind of
really good match. Well,
I'd never ever want this to come across as patronising to wrestlers, but when I say lifetime achievement, I mean because she's already given me a lifetime of joy, not because she's reached the end of her career.
Yeah.
But that really felt like especially from Triple H the Booker, like a kind of. Really sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Sorry, made you a star and then tried to kill that over and over and over again.
It's also fun to sort of relate to wrestlers, isn't it? Because, Bayley's achieved pretty much everything in her career. Many times over, basically, like you say, multiple world championship reigns. But, like, you wonder if they do secretly still have that bucket list of, like, not just winning the Royal Rumble, but as she alludes to there, pointing at the sign.
Yeah.
Like, we've all been thinking, like, when you've been... booking yourself, wrestling your teddy bears in your bedroom, pointing at the WrestleMania sign. And then, I thought the story that they told, aside from not giving it decent music at WrestleMania or the Bayley release, but disregarding that, I thought the story they told, a run from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania was really good. And, happy she's enjoying it, despite the fact she's attacked Jade Cargill. So, Has she? I don't know. What do you think?
Word on the street. Well, we will have discussion of that in our after news today. And indeed discussion of lots of great wrestling things as well. But
CM Punk. We'll be talking about CM Punk. He's the best.
I'm just like trying to... Oh, God. I think I'm so old these days. I mean, we're all in our 30s, fact.
We're all in our 30s.
I can never remember if I was going to want to get some more fantastic and digestible wrestling content, where I would go for that.
I'm glad you asked, because whilst you're waiting for that after news, you can check out this video. Boom! Right here. Sorry. Boom! Right here.
It's been there between us all along. I can't believe I didn't see that. You can't either. Click it.
It's like a double drunk chocolate cookie.